Hey everyone. So in this video, we're going to be going through the step-by-step process on installing Zoom on your computer. I'm going to be doing this on a Windows computer today, but it should be pretty much the same process for installing it on a Macintosh computer as well. So we're going to start on our computer here, and we're going to open up a web browser. You can use whatever your preferred web browser is. I'm going to go to zoom.us/download. There's a couple options in here. The first one, the one we're going to install, is the top one right here, Zoom Client for Meetings. We're going to click download. And I'm using Firefox today, so it's going to save that. There's a couple places you can find that after it downloads. You can either find it in your downloads folder right here, or you can find it in the downloads folder in your web browser. So I'm going to install it directly from the web browser. Close that. All right, so this is the first screen you're going to come to, which is the login screen. Likely once the university finishes its enterprise agreement with Zoom, you will have to log into this the same way you would your UA Connect or your email using your UA login ID. But for today, I'm just going to log into my personal account. So right now I'm logged into my personal account, and this is what you're going to see after you log in. So before we get started with the meeting, I'm going to go ahead and go through some of the things in settings. You can access initial settings from either clicking on this gear right here, or you can click on settings in the menu underneath of your user icon. So a few things to note in this menu. Start Zoom when I start Windows. That means it'll automatically log you into Zoom as soon as you boot up your computer. When closed, minimize window to the notification area instead of the taskbar. That means that if you hit close on the application, it won't minimize it down here into your taskbar. It'll put it over and to the right where your notification area is with those other icons such as Box or Dropbox. Another useful setting in this menu is to automatically copy the invite link once the meeting starts. That allows you to paste the invite link, that is, into either a message or an email directly without having to hunt down and find the invite link in the menus after you start the meeting. Underneath the videos tab, you'll see a few options. This is to select your camera. This only really pertains if you have multiple cameras on your computer. You're also going to see aspect ratios here. 16:9 is the standard widescreen size, as well as the original ratio. This is what the camera is capturing at this moment. And you'll notice that if I go to widescreen, then it kind of chops it off and makes it widescreen. But the sacrifice for that is I get these gray bars on the side instead. Other options in here include enable HD. This will be heavily dependent on your internet connection, as if you're outputting HD video, if your camera is capable of doing that, it will demand more from your internet connection as opposed to just outgoing standard definition. So if I click on enable HD, it'll flip over and you'll notice I'm a lot higher definition. I've filled in the screen a lot more. It's changed the settings on the camera because I have an HD camera. If I disable HD, then it makes it a smaller window in order to compensate a standard definition image into a widescreen format. I'm going to leave it enabled HD for now, just so I can have a full image on here for you to view. Mirror My Video is something you'll really want to pay attention to when it comes to rehearsal in Zoom. Basically, what that does is that it's automatically checked, so when I raise my right hand, it's my right hand on here. However, if I uncheck it, then if I raise my right hand, then it's my right hand over here. What that does is that basically it flips your video so that the perspective is correct, so that when I raise my hand on my video, it's the right hand on the right side. So likely you'll want to have your video mirrored so that when you're telling somebody to do something on Zoom, you can have what you're telling them to do to look off to the right is the same right as their right. as opposed to having it this way, which is more of a stage right. Touch up my appearance is an automatic thing in the program itself. I haven't personally noticed a huge difference with this if I have it turned on or not. I'm wondering if you have to be closer to the screen in order to make that work. I assume if you have this check, it's going to use more resources in order to try to clean up the image that's outgoing from your computer. But it ultimately comes down to you whether or not you want that checked. Some things to note in this meetings tab down here in case they need to be referenced later. Always display participant names in their video. If we are doing a broadcast, we may ask you to uncheck this at some point if your video is showing up with your name on it, as opposed to just being a flat video screen like what we're seeing on mine right now. Turn off my video when joining a meeting. This is something that is a personal preference. Basically means that automatically when you join a meeting, you will start your meeting with your video turned off. And that way you can make the decision to turn your video on and off as you desire to have it on and off without having to quickly turn it off after a meeting starts. I'm going to leave that checked because that's my personal preference for it. Always show video preview dialog when joining a meeting. That means a window will pop up as you join a meeting so that you can see what your video looks like ahead of time. This is something we're probably definitely going to need checked, and I would just go ahead and check that now, that if you hide non-video participants, what that does is if you have your video turned off in a Zoom meeting, normally if this is unchecked, it'll just be a gray box with your name on it. This will be relevant in performances since we'll have directors and, for instance, me on the stream not showing video but as a participant. Therefore, you'll want to hide me because I'm not one of the people that you need to feature in the video. Spotlight my video when I speak. We're going to leave that unchecked for now because all of our videos done via production-wise are going to be in a grid format, so therefore we may not necessarily want anybody in Spotlight unless they are doing a monologue. Display up to 49 participants per screen in gallery view. This is going to come back to your internet connection because if you have this checked, it's going to display the maximum amount of people that Zoom can display on a grid screen at one time. If you have a lot of people on your screen, it's going to bog down your internet more versus if you have this unchecked where it only has a handful of the most recent speakers on your screen at a time. The next tab we're going to talk about is the audio tab. There's a few things in here to consider as far as where your sound is coming from and where your sound is going. So the first thing is speaker. You'll see I have multiple options here for speaker systems. I can select it. The most simplest to do here is to select it as the same as the system, because then it will always default to what your computer system is regarding as your primary output. Microphone, you'll see a few options here. This may only be one thing on yours. Mine, I have this external microphone hooked in, as well as the microphone that's built into my webcam. I'm going to leave mine selected to the external microphone, and you can see reaction from me talking into this test level. This checkbox here will automatically adjust your volume so that your microphone output level isn't too high in case you actually accidentally get really close to it or really far away from it. It keeps it at a standard even level. Other things to note on here are to automatically join audio by computer when joining a meeting. When you join a meeting, you might get a pop-up dialog box asking if it's okay to automatically connect your audio from your computer to the meeting, and you can check this box here or in that dialog box as well to say that it automatically does it as soon as you log in. Similar to hiding your webcam when you enter a meeting, you can mute your microphone as well. So that way you can still join a meeting if maybe you're not totally set up somewhere. If you're still trying to get things together before the meeting, you can still join it but remain muted until you're ready to speak. If you're muted and this is checked, you can hold down the spacebar button in order to unmute yourself while you talk. This is useful primarily for meetings, but not so much for productions. that you can stay muted when you're not talking. Similar to how a walkie-talkie works, you need to push this button in order to actually talk. There's a few options in the share screen menu to check into. Enter full screen mode when a participant shares your screen. If anybody in your meeting shares their screen, that means your window will go into the full screen mode. You can maximize zoom window when participants share screen. I believe you can only have one. Yes, you can only have one or the other of those selected. Again, full screen takes away all of your toolbars and everything and just has the zoom screen. Maximize allows you to still have your toolbars. Scale to fit shared content in the zoom window. You're going to want to make sure that's checked because your monitor is not necessarily going to be the same size of monitor as anybody else. You'll notice that mine that I am on right now is an ultra wide monitor. Therefore, it is on the recording, it is not showing all of my monitor because it is much wider than what is being recorded right now in order to show you more detail. Side-by-side mode enables participants to see shared screen alongside the speaker view or the gallery view. That makes it so that when somebody goes into a screen sharing mode, you can still see their camera as opposed to only seeing their screen. And if you're sharing your desktop, having this checked silences your notifications from your desktop. You're going to want to leave that checked, so that while you're sharing your screen, you don't get potentially private information popping up on your screen. We're going to jump down to the virtual background tab down here. This allows you to create a different background behind your person. There are a few defaults here to choose from. Some of these need to be downloaded at the time of using. So if you click on it, it might give you a pop-up window requesting you to download. I'm going to go ahead and download this one real quick. Okay, so now I'm in space. So what this allows you to do is have a virtual background in your scene. You might use this in rehearsal to set yourselves in particular space, such as a classroom or a library or anything like that. You can add in your own custom images by clicking the plus down here. You can add either an image or a video. For instance, there are two default videos down here. I'm going to switch to the beach one so that now I'm on a beach and there's waves behind me. Or I have the Aurora Borealis going behind me. Or a still image in San Francisco. Jumping back to none, you can also select down here. There's that mirror my video option again that we talked about earlier. You also have this option of I have a green screen. It doesn't necessarily mean actually green screen. What it means is you have a solid background behind you, and what that essentially does is makes it so the computer has an easier time identifying where you are as opposed to where all your stuff is behind you, because there's nothing behind you. That way it knows what it should be looking out for. As an example, I'm going to go ahead and check that I have a green screen, which I clearly don't. And then I'm going to put myself into an image, and it's going to have a really hard time trying to figure out where to put things if you don't actually have a green screen behind you. In fact, that's just about the opposite of what we would want. So, okay, so the last tab we're going to talk about is the recording tab. Now, if you're recording for a class, or you're doing your stream for a class, and you want to record the lecture, you can go ahead and click the record button on the main screen. What this does in this menu is tells Zoom the details of how you want that recording handled. So it's going to be a local recording. Here you will tell Zoom where you want it to store the video after you are done recording. You can either click open, which will take you to the file in which that video would be stored, or you can click change and determine anywhere that you would want your files to be stored on your computer, such as your desktop, for example. Another option is to check this box, and it will ask you at the end of your meeting where you would like the recorded files to be stored. This is helpful if you're storing it in a specific classroom folder, and then you don't have to keep coming in here and constantly changing your recording locations. It'll just ask you at the end of each recording. Record a separate audio file for each participant who speaks. Most of the time you're not going to want this selected because it's just going to create a whole bunch of extra files for you. Speaking of editing after the fact, if you're going to edit this video in something like iMovie or in Adobe Premiere, you're going to want to check this box to optimize for third-party video editors. You're going to want to make sure this stays checked. It's checked by default to record video during screen sharing. So that way, if you share your screen or if a student shares their screen, it will continue to record throughout. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new meeting so we can get into a meeting screen. All right, so I've made it a little bigger here so you guys can see what I'm clicking through a little bit easier. So I'm going to start with these tools at the bottom here of the screen. First of all, you have mute and unmute. And also, if you click up this button here, it gives you the options for your speakers and your microphone. It also has the ability to stop the video and also gives you the options for your source of your video feed. Under security here, you have the ability to lock your meeting or enable a waiting room. What a waiting room means is that it essentially makes like a waiting space for people to enter into as they are waiting for your meeting to begin, rather than only being able to enter the meeting after it has started. Chat just enables the chat, which we'll show here in a second. And then this is checked to allow people to rename themselves so they can change their name during chat. I'm not sure when you would want to allow people to change their name during chat, but that's something personal preference. If I click on participants here, it opens this window off to the side. Move that. Opens this window off to the side. This is where all of your participants in your meeting would be listed. Right now it's just me in here, so you can only see me. And you can click that participants window on and off by clicking this button down here. Another thing is the chat window. If you click on chat, it pops that open. A couple things in here. If I type a message, I can either select everyone, or if there was more people in this meeting, it would show individuals to send these messages to. Under these three dots, you have a few options here as well, where you can limit who participants can chat with. If, for instance, if you want your participants to only be able to chat in the public chat that everybody can see, you can enable that. Or the default option is everyone publicly and privately. That means that people in your Zoom meeting can send private messages to each other without anybody else in the meeting being able to see what it is. Or you can select that they can only send messages to the host by selecting host only. Or you can disable the chat entirely by selecting no one. This is your share screen button. If you click on that, it pops you up into here a few options. So I have two monitors on my computer, so it's showing me screen 1 and screen 2. It also gives you the option of a whiteboard, which is kind of interesting. If I click on that and share, then it opens up this whiteboard space that you can draw on, or people can draw on. And you can erase, you can enter text, that sort of thing. Some of you might find that useful for classes, but not likely very useful for productions. Other options in share screen are if you have an iPhone or an iPad set up as an external camera, you can do that. It also allows you to show individual windows of things as well. So if I have a window open, let's say I have a window open that's going to YouTube. And I want to share a video, I can then go in here, and it'll probably need to update and repopulate that. So I'll click out and click share screen. Okay, so now it sees my Firefox window right there, and I can click on, so it will only share what's happening in this window. So if you want to have a video, but you don't want to have your whole desktop showing, it will only show what's happening in this video on this window. Another couple of options here is to share your computer's sound and to optimize screen sharing for video clip. This is useful if you're trying to share a YouTube clip with the other people that are involved with your stream, because then the stream will know that it needs to devote extra processing power to making sure that video comes across as clearly as possible. We'll close out of that, and out of this. Okay. Other options on here, or at least the last one worth noting, is the record button. And this makes it so that you can record your And this makes it so you can record your meeting. So if I go ahead and continue without audio because I'm muted, then it shows this recording tab up here, and you can pause or stop your recording. Other thing of note is to enter a full screen up here, which is different from maximizing it using this button right here, because it takes up your entire screen and gets rid of your toolbar and everything, and devotes your screen only to Zoom itself. Once you're done with your meeting, you're going to go ahead and come down here to end, and this, if you click on End Meeting for All, it ends it for everybody and totally closes out the session. Or you can choose to leave the meeting instead, which essentially leaves the meeting open-ended if you want to leave it open for people to discuss things afterwards. But if you have to jump out to do something else, then that's fine, and it makes somebody else the primary control person for the meeting. So I'm going to click End. So that's the highlights of what you need to know about the Zoom program. As I said in the last video, if you have any questions about any of this, feel free to reach out to me. Thank you for watching.